The sounds of the season can often sound like this.
So, when are we getting some grandkids?
But with Hilton's Season to Stay sale, they could sound a bit more like this. Or this. Stay and save up to 20% off when you book before January 5th at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay. Minimum 2-night stay required. Excludes luxury and all-inclusive properties. Terms and conditions apply.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Bryce and Hunt are stunned by the reveal of Sabine's potential meddling in evidence that suggests she is the one behind Danika's murder. While they continue their investigation and review Viktoria's evidence of the kristalos demon, Ruhn conducts his own research into mediwitch techniques that could repair Luna's horn. With limited new information on their hands, Bryce and Hunt push forward their investigation by going back to the scene of where the kristalos demon was last seen, only to realize that they must finally face Sabine to determine whether they can catch her in a lie that will prove her involvement in her daughter's death. The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author.
This podcast is a discussion, shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
The interpretations presented in this podcast are just a few of the many possibilities. Listeners are encouraged to read along and share their own analysis of the text.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series and extended universe spoilers may be discussed with or without warning.
Explicit language as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
This is part 1 of this week's episode. Stick around for part 2, which releases on Thursday. Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sara J Maas's first installment in the Crescent City series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This week, we're discussing chapters 38 through 43 of House of Earth and Blood.
This week, we ask ourselves, where are Bryce and Hunt in their healing journey?
Themes we see in this section include attraction and testing boundaries. We start part 3 of House of Earth and Blood with chapter 38. So before we dive in, I recognized that we never talked about the names of the different parts. So I just want to acknowledge that at this point, we've gone through the hollow, the trench, and the canyon, which are layers of hell, which also continue in Sky and Breath. So I'm curious to see what the parts are going to be named in Flame and Shadow, because she's run out of levels of hell.
Yeah. Also, where this lands in the MC universe, just our universe, the AJ universe, Crescent City 3 comes out on Tuesday for us.
Yes, we are 2 days away from Flame and Shadow. So
I'm losing my shit.
We still know nothing. Between part 1 and 2, we had a time jump. But why are we separating part 2 from part 3? We've just learned the news that Sabine may have tampered with evidence. I think a new part is starting right now because our heroes are getting closer to the truth, even if their sights are on the wrong target, right? They're looking to Sabine as the potential murderer. They're not quite right, but they are headed in the right direction. I also think the new part is starting right now because the bonds between Bryce and Hunt are growing stronger. We've officially crossed over into the friend zone, and their relationship is going to continue to grow, only for it to fall. But I think it's an important transition in their relationship, which is why we're transitioning into a new part. As we enter this chapter, Hunt is upset that Bryce can't face Sabine without feeling really weak. He acknowledges that Bryce was strong against the Viper Queen, against Philip Briggs, against Ruhn and his friends, and she's got sass, she's got spark. But when it comes to Sabine, Bryce cowers. In Hunt's mind, Sabine's not worthy of Bryce's fear, and I think that's, from my point of view, why he's like, why? Why do you feel this way?
It's really, I hate saying interesting, but it's interesting to read it from his perspective because of just how Hunt copes with Bryce's, I don't know, like struggle with what's happening. I found it very curious to see how he reacts and where he stands with it, because he seems really confused. And I think like at this point we find out like Hunt likes Bryce when she's strong.
Yeah.
He likes her when she's holding a gun and is able to shoot bullets through everything. It's a reminder that Bryce is the alpha hole sometimes in their relationship, and he likes her as the alpha hole, and the alpha hole isn't holing.
It's not alpha-ing?
No, I saw what I said. Isn't alpha holing. Even like the way that she looks is hard for him to observe. Quote, in a pair of sleeping shorts and an oversized worn t-shirt, she looked young, small, tired. All right, well, first off, she is young. Like, I know we're all like, yay, she's 25, but he's several hundred years old.
Yeah.
We come back to this struggle of this is a man who's gone through so much. She is but a wee child.
Yes.
She
is more developed than Feyre or Aelin were, but somehow the mate is still hundreds of years old.
She's still baby girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, and I think it's like, Jim's like, look, he's not 500 years old. It's like, oh.
You know what? Give me a human male that's 20-something and a couple 100-year-old female Fae mate.
Yes, please.
Although I feel like it just would be disastrous because the Fae would not put up with the male shit.
They really would. That's why the Fae males have to go with such a young, impressionable women, because they're like, you're too dumb to know.
Yeah. Okay, give me a 50-year-old human male. Maybe he's learned something. I don't know. Something. I think what SJM's trying to teach us is human men just can't cut
it. She's like, we need them to grow up by hundreds of years to reach our level emotionally.
Yeah.
As I said, Hunt is drawn to her strength sexually, mentally, everything. And I think that what's also kind of like messes with him right now is that this is mirroring Hunt when he saw Sandriel. Bryce was the one who helped him get out of that funk, and he's going to be the one to help her get out of this one. But I think it's also kind of a moment of like seeing himself in her. And in that moment, like if you think about it, Bryce has been, now not including the night he first met her and she was like went through that, whole traumatic thing. But since then, Bryce has been indestructible, and I think he's been relying on her strength quite a bit without knowing.
Yeah.
The sexual tension on Hunt's part is through the roof. As we've been saying over and over, he likes Bryce strong. So why are we getting this side of him now? This unbelievably horny side. And I don't think that it's because he's getting off on her pain. It's the worst timing to suddenly be really into her. I think it's because she's in such a, I'm not trying to say that he's into her pain, but I think she's in such a low, vulnerable spot. It allows him to be vulnerable too, even just mentally.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, her mind is breaking. So can mine.
Yeah.
I too can be attracted. And it starts with comfort initially. Hunt doesn't go in hot and heavy. Let me suck your toes just yet. It starts off with, quote, Bryce stiffened and Hunt laid his free hand on her knees, squeezing once. And then, quote, Hunt rubbed a thumb over her knee. Now, these are they're very intimate, but it can also be very comforting.
Right.
And even if it's not sexual, because like with friends, it can be a hand on the knee, just a good pat and stuff. I'm not going to lie. Thumb on the knee, rubbing thumb, a little slutty.
On Hunt's part.
Right? A little too hot.
Yeah.
But again, you're still in the comfort zone. Now, I'm about to go into his more explicit thoughts. And I think it's really important how we get to those explicit thoughts, because right before he goes on his dirty little mind tangent, him and Bryce are going back and forth. He's kind of already lured her out of her own mental state. And now they're brainstorming. They're thinking, okay, well, if it's Sabine, then why did she do this? What are the motivations? What's going on? And they're going back and forth. They're bouncing off of one another. And you're seeing equals and you're seeing a partnership. So now that we're getting, and I think it's really important, again, because you're like, hey, what the fuck, Hunt? Why are you being horny for her now? I want to say, like, that happened right before this quote. Bryce mused, toying with her toes. They were painted a deep ruby. Ridiculous, he told himself. Not the alternative. The one that had him imagining tasting each and every one of those toes before slowly working his way up those sleek, bare legs of hers. Bare legs that were mere inches from him, golden skin gleaming in the first light. He forced himself to withdraw his hand from her knee, even as his fingers begged to move, to stroke along her thigh, higher. We're not here to kink shame Hunt. We don't do that.
No.
But that isn't foot fetish. Like,
yes.
SJM, you wrote a foot fetish.
She wanted to diversify her male pool and their kinks.
There's one for everyone.
There is.
We talked, was it you, me, and our friend, Nicole? We were talking about foot fetish, or was just me and Nicole talking about it?
It might have been just you and Nicole.
Oh, I was talking about, like, I wouldn't be opposed to being with a guy who had a foot fetish if he funded my pedicures.
Right. Obviously. That's a requirement.
Give me a foot massage and make my feet pretty.
Yeah.
Whatever you got to do with them, buddy.
Yeah.
Now, all foot fetishness aside, this is hornier than we have ever seen Hunt, right? Like, he's always kind of, we went from, like, not 0 to 60. There's definitely been buildup, but this is, like, the most explicit that we've had from him. And he admits here that his mind has been drifting like this since the gun range, which I think was earlier that day.
2 chapters ago, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it was, like, the same day.
Yeah, same day.
So, I mean, he's aware that this is just, there's been a shift, and the shift is recent, and the shift is now. And again, it comes back to she's vulnerable. This, I mean, if you think about everything we talked about last episode and this episode, like, all this happening in one day, so much vulnerability happening in such a short amount of time. So it makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, as you were saying, vulnerability is hot to Hunt because he's never had that in his life. He hasn't had it with Shahar. He hasn't had it with any member of the Triari. This is new territory for him. So it makes sense that he's getting off on it. I do think it's important to note that a lot of this feels not against his will, but against his better judgment. He talks about his fingers begged to move. It's a compulsion he can't even control.
Yeah.
So he probably knows, talking about the motivations of a murderer is not a turn on. However, in this moment, I can't help but be attracted to you.
Right? It's like, yeah, so that murder was horrible. But, like, can I touch your thigh?
Yeah, but, can I just suck on your toes?
Just give me your toes. And the thing is, she wears so many heels. Those are calloused.
Yeah, they're probably dry.
You don't wear heels and not have calluses.
He's had lots of opportunity to look at her toes. Why is it now that he's deciding they're attractive?
He's in a safe space, too.
He's in a safe space.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk more about Bryce and Hunt's attraction for each other this episode.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm very excited about it.
Oh, we both are.
Yeah. As we were mentioning, motivations of a murderer, not exactly the time to get off on your rocks or rock your socks. I don't know, whatever.
There's rocks and there's being off of them.
Yeah. and that's where Hunt is right now. But I make this shift because I want to talk about the fact that the motivation of villains always come back to power. And I would love to see someone try to not make it about power. I guess revenge, but that's still power over someone who's wronged you. But anyway, I bring this up because Hunt and Bryce are making a lot of assumptions based on very little information. They're making assumptions that Sabine killed Danika because Danika was more powerful and would have been prime. They're assuming Sabine was involved with Sandriel to become prime of all shifters. And what it's just telling me, A, is they're grasping at straws, but also this idea of power and villains is just so messy. And because there's so many opportunities for power, it's very easily to be led astray when trying to identify the murderer.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising that they go in this direction, to be honest.
It's honestly such a genius red herring, too, on SJM's part, because in their brainstorming session, they're like, oh my God, they're after Micah. He's the poor victim here.
Right.
And, quote, Tertian's death might have just been to fuck with Micah's standing. For fuck's sake, she and Sandriel might even be in on it together, hoping to weaken him in the Asteri's eyes. It's done so well. Because you're reading that, you're like, yeah, this makes sense to me.
Yeah, totally logical.
Yeah, like, why wouldn't they do it just to fuck with Micah? And now, yeah, that's why, like, the reveal is going to be so dramatic.
And it's curious to me, and I don't know if this was part of your notes, but of course they're villainizing the women.
Right. It's easier for them to believe that.
Instead of believing Micah, who's a victim, could have actually also been a villain.
It is very funny. I didn't write that, but good point. It's not without
without cause.
Yeah. Like, you know, Sandriel tortured Hunt for years. Sabine is
just an asshole.
Yep. But it is still easier to believe that versus it could potentially be Micah.
Right. Bryce tries to control her reaction to the news of Sabine potentially being involved in Danika's murder, as well as the uncertainty of their investigation in general, through physical exercise. Now, physical exercise is great. It's a common way for people to work off anxiety and, you know...
Not in this house.
Just
not here.
Well, not here. My girlfriend does it. I do not.
I'm looking at you and me
Nope.
and this cat.
I'm just going to lay on the couch. Thanks.
I'm going to drink some more caffeine and make this worse.
However, Bryce takes it to an extreme. She runs so much and for so long until she can hardly walk because of the pain in her old injury. I just want to acknowledge it. It's not unlike Hunt taking his scalding showers. A shower is not a bad thing. Exercise is not a bad thing until you take it to the extreme. I also love this moment because we see a growing connection between Bryce and Hunt. He doesn't tell her she can't go, but he's like, I'm going to join you, which I think is growth. That he's not demanding what she do. He's just going to be like, I'm going to be there too because it's stupid for you to run alone at 1 o'clock in the morning.
You're like, oh, it's just like, it's so sweet.
It is so sweet. And what I love more than anything is that he matches her pace. Quote, he'd stayed by her side the entire time, hadn't complained or spoken, had just kept pace. And I want to suggest in this moment, even though Bryce does not make this connection, for me, I think it demonstrates that Hunt is a better friend to Bryce than Danika ever was. Because Danika was always leading, demanding, telling Bryce to follow. Whereas Hunt's just like, if this is what you want to do, I'm just going to be right there with you.
Yeah.
And I doubt Danika would ever do that.
There was a note that I almost made later in this episode, which now I can't remember, but I'm just going to try to remember now, that it's similar to Danika. But I was about to write that. I'm like, but it's not similar to Danika. Like, there's moments where it's like, Hunt is just like a good replacement for Danika, but in so many ways, he's so much better.
It's such a more healthy relationship.
Yeah. Even though in this run, Bryce shuts Hunt out, you know, like she's like, I'm going to run. I don't want to talk to you. Fuck you. She doesn't really kick him out,
right?
You know, and she lets him run next to her. I think that's her way of kind of showing like, I feel safe with you.
And that she's comfortable with the companionship. Like, I'm not in a place to talk. I'm going to shut you out with my music.
Yeah.
However, you can still be my companion and we can run together instead of telling him, you know, just fly overhead.
Right. Or her trying to get away from him.
Right.
Which I think she would have done much earlier.
Oh, yeah. I do have a question. Towards the end of this chapter, once they're back from the run, Bryce keeps lying to Hunt about the pain in her leg from her injury, and I wonder why she keeps lying about it. I know that this is something she's always hidden from everyone, that she has this reoccurring pain. I wonder to what extent the lying about the pain is almost symbolic of their attraction to each other, that it's just like, no, I know it's there, but I'm not going to acknowledge it. It needs to be hidden away. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything, obviously, when I wrote this.
Well, to me, this is a great example of women.
Yeah. Just women in general.
Yeah, because how many times, and this is such a popular thing where someone asks a woman, hey, does it hurt? And the answer is, yeah, no, it hurts. Yeah, it hurts.
Or no, I'm fine.
No, but well, they'll say it hurts, but that's it. Like, yeah. Or like, I'm fine. Or like, you know, like there's like this shrug that every single woman will do. Be like, yeah, it hurts.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of leave it at that, where it's like, there's no other answer of like, yeah, it hurts, but I'm just used to the pain.
Right, right. It's why women think men are babies, because We have a higher tolerance for pain because we're so accustomed to pain.
We're so accustomed to it. I love the videos on TikTok of the ones where they're like put the period simulator.
Oh, yeah, the electrodes.
Yeah, the TENS. Yeah. And they're like, and men just like freaking out. And even like a couple of weeks ago when I was on my period, I was just like, oh, yeah, that's painful.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to try to describe to men. They're like, it's not uncomfortable. Sorry, I'm going to go on a tangent right now.
Okay.
It reminds me of, okay, so there is a new birth control for men that's coming up. That's like they're working on. And they have to inject something into, I think, the testicle, like one of the lines in there. And men, and they're like, okay, but if they do it, they have to have anesthesia. All they're doing is injecting into the scrotum.
Right.
When I got my IUD, that was the most painful experience I have ever had in my life. And that's because they are forcing you to have a contraction. They are literally cranking your cervix open. And I lived with I'm putting my cousin on blast right now. I lived with my cousin who was an OBGYN, and she just was like, it's going to be like minor inconvenience. And every single OBGYN was like, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable. And when I showed up and they're like, oh, you're here alone? Oh, you didn't take medicine? Oh, you plan on going to work after this? I'm like, the fuck? Yeah, no one told me this was going to suck. Everyone just told me it's going to be uncomfortable.
Right.
And I went to work and I was dying. So when I think of Bryce and this whole thing, it just is like the epitome of the female experience. Where it's like, she's in pain, but what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Just to continue on this tangent, it makes me so mad that a contraceptive for women that is acceptable, probably created by a man, that causes so much pain. People like you felt it for months after. Yeah. Everyone I know who's ever had one feels it for months after. And men never have to experience that.
They don't. I'm going to keep going on the fucking IUD tangent. I was on it. I had the IUD for a year. And you remember, I was like, I can feel it. I can feel it. Every time I sat down, I swear I could feel it. And there was even a point where I had this pain on I just described it, on my right ovary. Like, I felt it. And it wasn't even a pain. I just felt something there. I kept advocating for myself, demanded to go get an ultrasound done. And I literally pointed to it and I said, right here, there's something right here. And they found a super tiny, tiny little cyst. And the doctors, even my cousin, was like, oh, it's too small. You shouldn't feel that. I'm like, but I literally just pointed it to you.
Stop gaslighting me.
Yeah. And I was like, every time I sit down, I can feel my IUD. And they're like, well, no, it's in place. You shouldn't feel it. And the second they took it out, pain was gone.
I despise the medical profession.
The shit they do to women, everything has been done for men, has been done for like
white men.
White men. Yes. Thank you. And Amy gave me such intense eyes with that one.
The shit they do to people of color is even worse.
It's so much worse. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. We can go on it.
Let's move on.
But you know what? This is actually a great transition because we're about to go to mediwitch.
We are going to the mediwitch. So in chapter 39, we see Ruhn's investigation takes him to the mediwitch clinic. Mediwitch, however you want to pronounce it. Since you've read the book, you know that the mediwitch is Hypaxia masquerading as a mediwitch to become acquainted with society before she becomes queen. Instantly, Ruhn is attracted to her without knowing who she is. And I want to talk about why I think some of the reasons are in place for that attraction to develop, thanks to SJM. Let's start with the environment. The walls are painted white, everything is clean, pristine, there's sunshine. Well, yes, this could be just your average clinic. It's a very average-looking clinic. You also don't see white very often in SJM's books unless there's a reason. Think about Bryce's apartment. Bryce's apartment that Danika left for her is all white, symbolic of a new beginning. We see white in her other books, also symbolic of new beginnings or fresh starts. And I know that's symbolic for Hypaxia, but I think it's also symbolic for Ruhn. I think he wants nothing but a fresh start, a clean slate. I think he would love something like that. And I think he's attracted to it. We also know that there's music of a symphony playing in the background and that Ruhn finds Hypaxia's voice musical. Ruhn is very sensitive with his ears. He talks about how he's left lovers because of the noises they make during sex. We know he's sensitive to sounds. And
I relate so much to that. I was like, you and me both, Ruhn.
But everything about her presence in this setting is very pleasing to Ruhn. And I think that's part of the reason why that attraction starts.
There's something about Ruhn feeling so out of place, right? Like him being dressed in head to toe black and then being in this room where he stands out. Mm-hmm. I love your explanation because when I read this, I was like, why is he attracted to her? Like he should feel uncomfortable. He should feel like, I don't know, like he's with his dad or something.
Yeah.
But his dad isn't described in all white. This is a much more peaceful environment and setting. I love your breakdown because I was just like, what are we doing here, Ruhn?
Yeah.
Why are we like, I was like, daddy issues? What?
I think it's also because he does make a point to note that she has brown skin and night black hair. Mm-hmm. So even though she physically contrasts against the white, she belongs here.
Yeah.
And I think Ruhn has a vision of like, even though I feel like I stand out, I actually don't have to stand out. Mm-hmm. I can belong here too.
Yeah.
That's my point of view.
I like that.
I also want to call out the fact that there's a little snippet when Ruhn is looking around the clinic waiting for hypaxia. He sees pamphlets on a bunch of different things, one of them being scar therapy. We're going to learn later on, I can't remember if it's this book or Sky and Breath, but Ruhn has burn scars on his arms from when the Autumn King disciplined him as a kid. So he uses tattoos to cover up those scars. But there's such a thing as scar therapy?
When you made that connection, I was like, holy crap. I looked at it and I just immediately assumed Bryce and her scar. Mm-hmm. I just was like, it would make sense that Ruhn would look at that and be like, maybe he felt like you could never get that treatment because then how are you supposed to explain it?
Right.
You know,
exactly.
Like it's just like a thing that's out there for people that he probably felt like he could not do.
Right. Because if he were to do it, he would have to explain where he got the scars. Mm-hmm. He would have to out his father. That's disloyal.
Think about it. It's treatment. You're going to have to do it more than once. Right. So it's going to have to be multiple times of like, okay, like this is an issue. This is, I'm going to have to face this trauma over and over again versus a tattoo.
Yeah. But if he's got sleeves like I know he does, that is hours and hours and multiple sessions of tattoo.
Yeah. Or maybe he's fake. It could just be one really long session.
I think he's choosing to cover his pain with more pain, but not the kind that's true healing.
Yeah.
He's just trying to cover it up with tattoos instead of seeking real treatment. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, I love tattoos. I have tattoos. However, if you look at it from the point of view of healthy healing, he is like Bryce and Hunt in that way, in that he's chosen the route that will punish himself instead of seeking true healing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you entirely. One thing I noticed, I'm going to make a TikTok video about it, and it's through this podcast that made me realize every single fan art I've seen out there of Ruhn is wrong because they make his sleeves black, his tattoos.
Instead of really colorful. Mm-hmm. I think that I've seen a few with colorful.
I don't know. I don't know.
Now I'm going to have to go look.
I don't think so. Before Amy gets into the whole dynamic of food and everything here, because it's such a great... We haven't gotten a lot of food moments here.
We haven't gotten a lot of food.
So when it happens, I'm always like, yes, Amy, speak. But this part just kind of makes me laugh. Ruhn is asking her about the horn, and he's not being subtle about it.
No, he's not.
He says, quote, legend says it was made with magic and could be used with the starborn gifts, yes, from the First War. And then Hypaxia's like, oh yeah, the horn.
Yeah.
And his thought is, none of the other witches had gotten it so quickly. Maybe they were like, oh shit, he's looking for the horn.
I can't say anything.
I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah,
people keep dying.
It's true.
Right? Like, people are dying. This guy is part of the Ox.
Yeah.
No one's hot enough for that.
Yeah.
To risk it.
Yeah, it's true.
It just was such a dumb moment of, and I'm going to blame Ruhn. I'm not going to say this is SJM, but just like
Ruhn's dumb.
Whoa, she got it, and she's pretty, and her hair's soft, and her voice is nice. Girl. I like girl.
I think men can't have it all. He's hot, and he's buff. He can't have a brain too.
Fair. I've asked for too much. I've asked for too much.
You really do.
That's on me. That's on me.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
The sounds of the season can often sound like this.
So, when are we getting some grandkids?
But with Hilton's Season to Stay sale, they could sound a bit more like this. Or this. Stay and save up to 20% off when you book before January 5th at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay. Minimum 2-night stay required. Excludes luxury and all-inclusive properties. Terms and conditions apply.
The holidays are back at Starbucks, and there's so much to share. With classics like Caramel Brulee Latte, Peppermint Mocha, and Chestnut Praline Latte, we're celebrating everyone's flavor of festivity. Order yours in the app.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
So let's talk about food in this scene. And like Jack said, I feel like there is a lot less use of food in a symbolic way in this novel. And so I really had to dig in and think about what's happening in this scene. So Hypaxia asks Ruhn to wait until her lunch break so that they can talk about what he wants to talk about. When Hypaxia comes out, she serves Ruhn lunch as well as herself, even though Ruhn's like, oh, you didn't need to feed me. It's totally fine. In return, Ruhn pours Hypaxia's tea for her in addition to himself. And Ruhn smells the tea. I can't remember if he tastes the tea, but never once does he actually consume any food.
Oh.
The whole time it is Hypaxia who's eating. She's eating the grapes. She's putting honey on the cheese and bread. But we never get Ruhn consuming anything.
Talk about trust issues.
Well, I mean, he might not be hungry. It's fine.
She's eating dates and grapes. It was a sad, pathetic lunch. That was my note on that. I was like, what are you trying to convey?
It's a charcuterie board is what it is.
There was no cheese, Amy.
There was cheese.
Okay, allowed.
How I interpret this is Hypaxia is in control here. We know, having read the book, that she's kept her identity a secret. Mm-hmm. We also can tell she's extremely smart. And Ruhn has sought her out for her knowledge. So she's really commanding their interaction here because of her knowledge, because She knows who he is, but he does not know who she is. There's a lot of power going on right now, even though Ruhn doesn't even know it. He's like totally oblivious.
Like at one point when he was like, oh yeah, that hypaxia, and she kind of pauses, and in my mind, her thought is, he really is a dumbass.
Yeah, honestly.
Right? Like, does he think I wouldn't be able to guess the horn? Does he not know who I am?
Yeah, and it begs the question, was hypaxia testing Ruhn? And I think she was.
And I don't think he passed. I think he passed in the sense that he's very kind. Like, Ruhn is a very nice, honorable, dumb man.
Right. I think what she got out of this interaction, because she does say, you know, I look forward to seeing you again or whatever. And it's not a sexual invitation, as Ruhn notes. But I do think it's a genuine invitation. I do think she's like, this is a pleasant fae.
Yeah.
And I could get along with him if I needed to.
Yep.
There were no red flags for me.
I mean, and for her, she really gets to be like, oh, this is the guy that I'm engaged to.
Right, exactly.
And it's like, it must be really relieving to see Ruhn. I mean, you know, he's a good looking guy, but he's so sweet too. Like, she comes out with her apparently charcuterie board, and he sees her and he's like, he jumps up to go help her immediately. Yeah. You know, we could do a lot worse than Ruhn. We
really could. Like, and if he knew who she was, she would interpret all of this as a facade.
Yeah.
But because he knows nothing about her, obviously, and he cannot figure it out for himself, she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
A little dumb.
So for this part of the discussion, I'm going to have a little bit of a book 2 spoiler because I think it's important for the conversation now. And if you haven't read book 2, jump ahead a little bit. You know, you mentioned earlier about hypaxia's skin color and how it's mentioned. She has dark skin, dark hair. And that is really important to know that SJM is doing that, because we don't, like you said, we don't see that mentioned again. And SJM has been doing that, where she'll introduce a character of color and then it's never brought up again. And we asked one episode, our listeners, hey, what are your thoughts? And overwhelmingly, the thoughts that we received from in our email has been, she needs to do better. Like, you know, mention it, because she talks about all these other characters with their fair skin, gold skin, but she never comes back to characters of color who are darker skin tone to mention them.
Right.
And again, why that's so important is because in book 2, when we find out that Lydia is her half sister, Lydia, who is white, who is fair, hypaxia's skin tone is used to show the juxtaposition to Lydia's whiteness. And now it becomes her skin tone is a device in a way.
It is, yeah.
To kind of throw us off of Lydia.
Yeah.
And, you know, just wanting to say like, hey, we recognize that SJM brought in a character of color and we love it, love to see it, happy for it. These are just thoughts that we have, thoughts that listeners have brought in, and, you know, it's just ongoing conversation.
Yeah, and I also want to point out, we are hit over the head so many times with the fact that Bryce's skin tone is golden and Hunt's skin is tan. But with Isaiah and Hypaxia, their skin is called brown or dark brown once.
Yeah.
And honestly, for a long ass time, I thought Hypaxia was pale, because Lydia, in my mind, is also pale.
I forgot that, again, kind of going still in the spoiler for book 2, Baxian. I didn't realize he's also has a darker skin tone.
Does he?
Until I saw fan art.
And honestly, I couldn't recall that Hypaxia had brown skin until I saw fan art.
Yep.
And then I made sure to pay attention when she was introduced.
Yeah. And the reason, again, like when we have other comparisons, and maybe SJM's uncomfortable and doesn't know how to describe it.
Right.
I'm pulling excuses here. I get that. But like, she's comfortable when talking about the Viper Queen, her moon skin, her moon white skin.
Yeah.
She's really comfortable talking about comparing white skin to like opals or, you know, translucent, and like, you know, she's beyond her main characters.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing, is that these are supporting characters.
Yeah.
She does it to the other ones when they have fair skin. And again, maybe pulling things, maybe she just doesn't know how to. But, you know, you can learn.
Yeah. That's definitely something to be learned. I also recognize that I want two things. I want to recognize my own faults as a reader.
Yeah.
For not recalling who has darker skin tones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though SJM doesn't, says it once and never says it again.
But why did
I make the assumption?
Yeah, in my mind, I delete that so quickly.
Right. And I recognize that's a fault of my own.
Absolutely. Same here.
A lot. However, to your point, there is an opportunity for SJM to do more with her description, to make it meaningful so that it does stick as a reader. And I recognize, having read the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, she does such a great job of describing all the different
skin tones
that are all dark.
Yep.
Or that are not pale. Like, pale is like the weird thing.
Yeah.
But everyone has different shades of brown, and she does such a great way of describing it. And I think that's where us as readers and writers need to do more to branch outside of what we read. Normally, so that we can learn from other authors who have done a good job.
I think I'm so happy you brought that up, because you said earlier, of as a reader, I'm not doing a good enough job of remembering that, categorizing it. And there's that saying of default white. Mm-hmm. And that's what my brain does. And I need to step it up too. So I've been working on that, especially with this book, where when there's a scene with Isaiah, really putting that in my head.
Yeah.
I will give SJM props for this. A lot of authors are in the fault of doing this thing where when they compare darker skin tones, they compare it to food.
Yeah.
SJM doesn't do that. So I want to give her props. And because that is we don't do that, guys. Don't do that.
It's another issue that we see in writing from Caucasian white authors, that they compare darker skin tones than theirs to food.
Yeah.
Talk about food as power.
Right?
We should not be doing that.
You just hurt my brain. Oh my goodness.
Right. So, I mean, and your friend Shay has talked about this with us before as well.
Yep.
No, there's other colors than chocolate.
Coffee,
caramel.
Right? Or if you're anyone who's cooler than this, caramel. But yeah, and I think it's an ongoing, important discussion. Yeah. I hope, listener, you tagged along, and I hope no one feels threatened by having this conversation.
Right.
Because of how important it is.
Yeah.
And because as readers and as writers, you and I, it's important to exercise our brain. Think beyond what our own imagination does.
Yeah. I also want to say, and I know this is a complete tangent, but I think it's important for this discussion. I've seen a lot on threads of diverse authors writing, saying, please stop asking me to be part of your diversity panel. I want to talk about the fun things too.
Right.
And so it's our responsibility to go and do the research. We shouldn't be relying on the people who have this experience all the time. They have a lot of knowledge to share with us, but they want to engage in the fun conversations too.
It's not up to other people of color to educate us.
Right.
It's up to us to educate ourselves.
Right.
And that's why, Amy and Amy's half Chinese, I'm half Hispanic. We are both white passing.
Yeah.
And
we identify as white.
And it's even with our mindset of already being culturally aware, because I'd say we are more culturally aware than other people, we still do these things.
Yeah, we still struggle.
Yeah, we still struggle. So yeah, I hope people stuck along with us on this one, because
it's important.
It is important. And I think it can be fun to push yourself and try books you wouldn't normally try, and have characters you normally wouldn't imagine. And to if you have to pull up fan art of Hypaxia, of Isaiah, of Bryaxis? No. Baxian, thank you. I keep calling him Pollux in my head. I know that's not right. Baxian, if you have to have the fan art there with you, then do it. But you can make this such a great exercise for your brain.
I agree.
Yeah.
I personally vow to read more books by more diverse authors, because I want to create my own dictionary of how to describe different skin tones and hairstyles and whatnot, because it will only make my own writing better.
Absolutely. And I promise to read as many smutty books by women of color
people.
With diverse authors and diverse characters. This is the tangent episode.
Okay, seriously. You guys, it was going to be a short episode. Now it's going to be long with our tangents. So now that tangent's over, let's move on to chapter 40. On the other side of Lunathian, Viktoria uses Isaiah as a messenger to tell Hunt and Bryce that she's found something in her search for the kristalos demon. And I find this very interesting because why does Viktoria send her superior to be the messenger to Hunt? And is it because she's paranoid and accustomed to not communicating certain things over the phone? It's the first time I've really been cognizant of that, and I think is a clue for why Viktoria is part of the betrayal later on.
Mm-hmm.
She's already doing some shady shit, even though her research into the kristalos demon is not shady because she's doing shady shit on the side. She's accustomed to communicating in ways that are not traceable. And I just want to point that out.
She's a shady person.
She is a shady person. She's a wraith.
A wraith, I tell you.
Hunt can tell in this exchange of information that Isaiah's not doing great because Sandriel is at the comitium and everyone is losing their shit. And it's a sweet moment when Hunt offers Isaiah help. Quote, "If you need anything from me, let me know." And Isaiah is shocked. In 200 years, I'm sure he's never heard that come out of Hunt's mouth.
Which such a low bar.
It's such a low bar, but it says a lot.
Yeah, it wasn't even saying, "Can I help you with anything?"
Right. Or let me do this for you. No, it's just like,
let me know if you need anything.
Let me know. But it means a lot for Isaiah to be shocked by it. And what this is showing me is that Hunt is continuing to be cognizant of his own transformation since seeing Philip Briggs and is trying to extend an olive branch. Between this and willing to accompany Bryce on a run, it's showing me that Hunt is ready to build connections in a way that he's not been willing to since basically the fall of Shahar.
You know, Bryce is just such a good influence on him.
Give Bryce the credit.
Yeah, I am. I'm gonna. He's learning his please and thank yous.
Yes, he is.
But it when I was reading this, I'm like, God, Hunt, this is so pathetic.
Yeah.
But then I have to remind myself, he's been tortured for hundreds of years at this point. He's only fresh out of it for 4 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. So, all right, cool. That's great. But it's more than just Bryce helping him learn how to not be an asshole. It's a sign of healing. If you think about the mindset Hunt must have been in for those hundreds of years of being tortured, he couldn't offer anyone anything. He was just trying to keep himself together.
Yeah. And I mean, part of it is he's been utilized. He's been an assassin, not only for Micah, but for those that have used him previously. Sandriel, I think there's an angel called Ramuel that used him. He's used to be taking advantage of. So for him to offer help is to say, I trust you to not take advantage of me.
Yep.
And that feels like a huge step for Hunt.
It does.
The infamous cell phone makes a reappearance here. Now, we discover not only is the cell phone used for retaliatory pictures, it's now a vehicle for Bryce to start changing her display name. And it's a great comedic through line for this second half of the novel. But I also feel like it represents their growing connection, that they are developing a friendship.
Yeah.
And that friendship is based on bickering, banter, jokes, annoying the shit out of each other. But that's how they build their bond. And I think what makes their friendship so genuine to me.
Yeah.
I just love it.
It's so sweet. It's also just so relatable.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any person whose best friend is named their best friend's name in their phone.
Right. I mean, you were Jack Sweet and Low for a long time.
Right? And you were something else in my phone that I'm not going to say.
Because it's...
I'm going to take that out. I'm going to bleep out. I don't want people to know that.
Yeah, that's fair.
It just shows that it's intimacy. It's one of my favorite things to do is, if I'm getting someone, if I'm typing someone in, our friend Nicole, when I first saved her on my phone, I met her through writing group. So I saved her as Nicole writing group, except I misspelled Nicole and group and I never changed it. And then Heather, our other friend, I saved her on my phone as Heather, Nicole's friend.
Nice.
Misspelled Nicole and Heather.
Of course you did.
I'm not going to change it.
Yeah.
And
now you and I are Amy half-brain, Jac half-brain.
Yeah. With the emojis.
Yes.
Coordinating. But, to that point, Bryce changes her contact info on Hunt's phone as Bryce rocks my socks. And I'm going to get into it later, what I think the photos kind of represent. For the meantime, just admire this little cuteness. And the fact that Bryce admits that she saw him plug in his
figure out his phone password, and
he doesn't change it. And that makes me so happy. And you know what? It's now my official new red flag. If he's not willing to give me his password and just let me know it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to go through your phone, but like, I should be able to change my name.
Right.
Bryce is not happy about the fact that they have to fly in the rain and tries to find excuses to fly, and Hunt tells her, don't be a baby. And Amy's note here, I'm going to read it, was patronizing, mocking her fear. That's a valid interpretation. My interpretation is, I think about in a few chapters, he is going to kind of challenge her again, and she's going to respond with a smile. And this is her level of communication. It's sarcasm. It's snark. It's everything. And I think the reason why she's able to let it go is because he's proven he respects her.
Yeah.
Now he can get away with, oh, don't be such a baby. Because it's like, well, I know you don't think I'm a baby. Also, no one wants to get that wet. That's like, I'm uncomfy with that. What I do love is how Hunt tries to tempt her. Once Hunt gets Bryce off the ground and they're flying, he's trying to get her to look, right? He's like trying to get Bryce to stop cowering and enjoy the city. And he says, look around, Quinlan. Enjoy the view. I like the city when it rains. And he's just trying to offer a piece of himself in that moment and just saying like, hey, like this is a thing that I enjoy and I want you to share that. Now, that's not the thing that gets her to look.
Right. That's not the thing that gets her to look. He tells her he'll buy her a milkshake and she's like, okay, I'll do it for ice cream, which I understand. But I do appreciate, even though he teases her, it is a marker for the development of their relationship, right? That he's teasing her good-naturedly, not to spite her. She's willing to take it. And the whole reason why he's adamant about flying is just because he wants to share a piece of himself, which is really, really sweet. Instead of saying, I want to share this part of myself with you. Come on. He's going to communicate on her level. He's going to tease her. He's going to offer her ice cream. Like, and I can understand that.
I'm going to call you a baby and I'm going to give you ice cream.
Okay.
All right.
By the time Hunt and Bryce get to the lab, Bryce is drenched and cold. Quote, she instantly wrapped her arms around herself, teeth chattering at the shock of going from the storm into the crisp cold. Bryce found herself shivering in the doorway of a spacious office. It's a very uncomfortable setup. And why does no one offer her, like, a blanket or something to dry off on and to help her be warm? And it's curious to me why it was so important for SJM to have this scene play out with Bryce drenched and cold, why it's important for the rain to be taking place at this time. And I think I finally figured out by chapter 41. So I'm just going to put a
hold on that.
All
right. I'm just trying to imagine, like, I even hate when I'm out of the shower and the water's no longer running on me. If my hair gets on my body, if it's not up immediately, I just hate that feeling.
Okay.
And she is drenched. She is cold. And Hunt tells her, walk fast. When he sees that she's cold, as in like warm it up.
Yeah.
And I felt like it came off a little cold. Like it's not like he gave her a playful smile or he winks at her. You know, it was like colder than what we've been seeing Hunt be.
He's all down to business.
Right. And that's kind of where this comes into, where I think that he's trying to be a tough guy and he's starting to be like, all right, I'm about to see Viktoria, or I'm going to be fucking tough. And then he caves immediately.
Yeah, it is a curious shift. It's as if he's like, oh, I'm at work. I've got to put this persona back on.
Right? But it goes away so fast.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to balance it.
Not at all. Let's get into appearances. Bryce thinks Hunt looks better when he's wet. shirt clinging to his muscles, while she was, quote, all too aware as she extended a hand of how her hair now lay flat on her head, thanks to the rain, of the makeup that had probably smeared down her face. And it's just like another thing where it's like men get to look good in shitty moments. Mm-hmm. And because Bryce puts in the time and effort to look good, mm-hmm. if things are disrupted, then we're assuming, like, she's assuming that it looks bad. And, you know, she's probably not wrong, you know?
She's probably not wrong. I also wondered if she feels threatened by Viktoria. Mm-hmm. And that's why she's hyper aware of how she looks right now.
Yeah.
Because she's meeting Viktoria for the first time.
Yeah.
Or,
and
well, not first time, but
no,
you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point. I think it's like, you know, she's also just really aware of her own attraction to Hunt. Mm-hmm. And it's like, God, there he is looking gorgeous. And I look like shit right now.
Yeah.
But I also love that she doesn't dwell on it. You know, she's just kind of like says it, accepts it, and is like, well, this is what I'm going to be now.
Yeah.
I'm a rat, a drowned rat. So like we were saying, Hunt kind of just started off with a tough guy exterior, like, you better walk fast. Sugar tits, that's where we're walking. We're going to be in here.
I did not say sugar tits.
We're going to be hardcore business here. And immediately he caves. When Viktoria just kind of gives, she's not even like fully flirty. She just gives her like a kind of flirtatious smile. Mm-hmm. Quote, Hunt grumbled, she does that flirty smile with everyone, so don't bother being flattered. I love that he feels like he has to throw that in there.
Yeah.
Because just in case Bryce is like blown away, and I was like, you're right, I am going to leave you for the Wraith.
I mean, what if Viktoria is a killer lesbian? Maybe he feels threatened.
Maybe like she's Ruby Rose.
Yeah, maybe.
Except I saw Ruby Rose in person.
She's tiny.
She's so tiny. Brie Larson, though. Killer lesbian.
Killer lesbian.
Is she gay?
She's queer.
Okay. Yeah, she could get anyone she wanted.
Yeah, she could.
Hunt decides to mark his territory by putting a hand on Bryce's thigh, and he keeps it there, and he keeps doing these little things like wrapping his wing kind of around Bryce, mm-hmm. keeping his wing touching her. And if there's anything we know about wings, is that it's very important to the men, right? Or the person who has the wings. Mm-hmm. You know, we saw that in Akatar where, you know, it's like, oh, careful with the wings. They're sensitive. And, you know, I think it's fair to say rules apply here. You know?
Spoiler for the prologue of Flame and Shadow, Crescent City 3, because that did come out earlier this week.
Yep. We're still processing, guys.
We're still processing. Because the prologue for Flame and Shadow has come out, mm-hmm. we learn that it's also a sign of possession. Because Lydia talks about it from her point of view.
Yep.
That the wing is touching her is a sign of possession constantly.
And it is such a bold move for Hunt to make because it does bite him in the ass. Mm-hmm. I'm going to just like give an instance of this, you know, intimate moment where Bryce is talking about the kristalos demon and she's a little strained by that. And it says, quote, Hunt's wings spread a little farther around her, but he said nothing. So he doesn't even have to do anything to be there for Bryce. Like everything about him is showing protectiveness.
Right.
Now, before I wrap it up, this whole like how it backfires on Hunt, I just want to say like SJMing right now.
Real hard.
Yep. Viktoria talks about, you know, when the kristalos demon shows up, there's a dip in temperature. What's that dip in temperature going to be?
77 degrees.
Of course, right? Because SJM probably wrote 7 degrees, was like, that's not enough. 77. The holy number, according to this world. Now, back to Hunt and Bryce. This, like I said, the intimacy, it backfires. Mm-hmm. And Hunt let it backfire. Quote, Hunt's hand slid from her leg, leaving a cold spot in its wake. A glance at his face saw the cause. Viktoria now held his gaze, her own full of warning. Can you remind me, like, Viktoria's not ranked higher than him. Hunt doesn't give a fuck if anyone's ranked higher than him.
No, he doesn't care.
He doesn't care. But there's something about her gaze that made him care?
Yes. And this brings me back to the first chapter in this episode. I don't talk about it until the breadcrumbs, but Hunt's not very good at hiding his interactions with Bryce in front of his fellow angels. So, for example, when he's texting back and forth with Bryce on the rooftop, Isaiah says something to the effect of, there are things worse than death.
Yeah.
And
I couldn't tell in that moment if he was like trying to get Hunt to be with Bryce or warn her away.
I don't know that that he was warning her away, but I think it was a warning of you could suffer death, but it could be worse if something happened to Bryce.
See, I interpreted that as there's worse things than death, as you've been alone for so long. Mm-hmm. There's worse things than being alone and dying alone, my friend. Yours is probably the right one. I mean, mine's is the romantic one.
I think it's equivalent. I think that they're the same. And it is for both Isaiah and Viktoria, who have also fallen, like Hunt, it's kind of a, hey, you're risking a lot by putting yourself in this situation.
Yeah.
And Hunt's not very good at picking up those clues.
No, he's not. And he just feels like he just has to keep putting his arm on her. Yeah, he can't stop, but that's because, spoiler for book 2, they're mates.
I want to get into the reason why I think Ruhn is really important right now. It's going to sound a little wild, and I think it explains a lot of what's going on that we're questioning about Hunt. I want to suggest that the Ruhn right now is representative of Hunt and Bryce's mutual attraction that they cannot dispel. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is, in the last chapter, in chapter 40, Bryce was against going into the Ruhn. She was trying to fight it, and Hunt wouldn't let her. And in the process, she encounters these moments where she can't fight her attraction to him. Mm-hmm. I'm going to read a couple quotes in a little bit to explain that. Now, we see kind of something similar happen in chapter 41. Bryce is trying to coax Syrinx out into the Ruhn. And we know from previous episodes that Syrinx is representative of Hunt. Syrinx cost $233,000 to free. Hunt is 233 years old. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a clear tie between the two of them. Syrinx only accepts being out in the Ruhn once Hunt does the coaxing himself. It's almost as if Hunt has to convince himself that it's okay to be attracted to Bryce.
Yeah.
And Ruhn has also, on top of all of this, increased their forced proximity. They're already in a forced proximity trope. He has to guard her. He has to live with her. Mm-hmm. But the Ruhn is forcing them even closer together. It is
a forced proximity trope. Oh, that made me so happy.
Yeah. The little, wiggle you just did. So let me read these quotes. So from chapter 41, quote, Hunt was keenly aware of every part of his body that met every part of hers as he scooped her into his arms. And from the previous chapter, from Bryce's point of view, quote, she might have pressed her body a little harder against the solid wall of his. He might have tightened his grip too, just a little bit. For the Ruhn to happen right now, there is truly no need for Ruhn. Mm-hmm. It does nothing for this story, except I think it forces Bryce and Hunt to really acknowledge that this attraction is not going away, and they're leaning into it a little bit more. And we're going to see them lean into it more, even after the Ruhn is gone.
I love this. I love it. Can I play a little bit with it? And you tell me. So we're going to, in a little bit, get into, they go on a hunt, they come back, Bryce showers, right?
Well.
And in my notes, I kind of talk about, we haven't had the same kind of, rebirth representation with showering like we have in other seasons with the ACOTAR series. This, in what you're telling me, is giving me that rebirth.
Yeah.
That bathing, that cleansing, that it is safe to do this.
Yeah.
And I like that in a world where everything is technology mixed with magic, they can only be reborn through natural elements.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've got goosebumps. I completely agree with you because all of this is happening 24 hours after the gun range.
Yep.
Literally after they've had an interaction that changes the nature of their relationship forever.
Yeah.
Where they've fully accepted each other and their vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. The rebirth is so important, and I completely am on board with you that the Ruhn represents that because of the way their interactions have changed. And I think we're going to talk more about that this episode.
Yep. Good job.
Makes me excited.
You did great.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to part 1 of this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Tune in Thursday for part 2, where we finish covering this week's chapters. has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.